Hi, this is Glenn with Crimson Lotus Tea. We're going to talk about volume of your tea brewing vessel. Gong Fu style tea is generally brewed in either gaiwans or teapots, and understanding the volume of them is critical to creating a reliable consistency in the tea that you're brewing. If you understand the size of your brewing vessel and you know how much leaf that you can have a very consistent quality. It is sometimes tricky to understand the volume of your tea brewing vessel, but I'm going to teach you a quick little trick on how to figure out what it is exactly. If you don't know what it is, then it's very hard to know how much leaf you want to put in there. For example, the guideline that I like to use, standard ratio for tea that we make, I try to brew with 1 gram of leaf for every 15 ml of water volume. And that can change a little bit. Sometimes if I want to brew something stronger, I'll use 1 gram of leaf for 10 milliliters of water. Or if I want to brew something a little bit lighter, I'll brew 1 gram of leaf for 20 ml of water. But the 1 to 15 is a really good baseline, and baselines are important in understanding and appreciating the consistency of a tea over time. If you're brewing a tea multiple times, you're going to want to have the same experience, and if you understand a good ratio, it's a good place to get started. For example, I know that this tea gaiwan right here is 150 ml. I know that because I've measured it, and the way to measure it is really simple. We use a fairly standard scientific principle that 1 gram of water takes up exactly 1 milliliter of volume. We're going to use a simple scale like this, pretty easily available in most places. This one measures in a bunch of different ratios, but just to make things easier, we're going to work in metric. It just makes things a little bit easier from a mathematical perspective. All scales have a little, or they should have a tare button. You're going to turn on the scale, and you're going to set the vessel that you want to measure on there. Doesn't matter what it weighs. We're going to tare it, set it back to 0, and then I'm going to slowly start filling this up with water. Water doesn't have to be boiling or even hot at this point. In fact, it's probably better if it isn't, so this is cool water. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking to stop right about where the lid is going to touch. And for this one here, I've done it, measured it in the past. This one's just a scratch over 150. So I generally round to the nearest 10. So if this is 154, then I'll go ahead and just call it a 150 ml gaiwan. And once you understand that, it's really easy to be able to know how much tea to use for that. Teapots. I do teapots just a little bit different. This is one of our Jian Shui teapots. Super gorgeous, really tiny. So it's nice to know exactly what the ratio is for that, or you can just way overfill it. So what I will do is I will measure the teapot itself first with the lid on. I will tare it and set it back to 0, and then I will set it off to the side. Let's get that right in the center. I'll fill it up until it's overflowing. Almost, there we go, just that. And then I'll go ahead and put the lid back on. And I'll let that water splash in and out. And so now I know that that's exactly how much water it can hold. Clean it off just a scratch and set it back down. And this one comes in at 61. So I would call this a 60 ml teapot. Like I said, I generally round down, or I round to the nearest tenth. And that just makes it easier. It's pretty inconsistent when you're making tea ware. Little tiny imperfections and changes in heat can change the size of something. So it's really hard to say that every single teapot or tea ware is going to be exactly the same size, especially when you're dealing with, several hundred made in a factory or in a small shop. We generally try to get things around a certain size, but it really doesn't matter if it's a few ml off of what we were shooting for. So that's it. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. It's really handy to have a little tiny scale with you. It's easy to measure out leaf. I know a lot of people like to do it, kind of eyeball it and get a better sense and stuff and go like that way. And you can do that through experience, and we certainly brew that way as well. But if we're sitting down and we need to truly analyze a tea, to truly understand a tea, I want to get the ratios as precise as possible, and I want to use scientific methods wherever I can. And so any of my tea tastings that I do from a professional perspective, I always use a 150 ml gaiwan. That's just me. I love that 1 to 15 ratio. It's really easy for me to do the math. Also, if I'm working on custom blends, using a 10 gram baseline is super easy. I can do 50% of this, 40% of that, 10% of that, and it's 5 grams, 4 grams, 1 gram. Super nice, super easy, works really good. And so something in the 150 ml range is exactly what I'm looking for. But if you're brewing just for yourself, probably a gaiwan in the 100 to 120 ml range is going to be pretty spot on. If you're brewing for a couple people, something a little bit bigger, 150 to 200 can work great. But otherwise, that's what we do, and that's how you figure out how big your teapot is. And with that information, go ahead, pick up a scale if you don't have one. Figure out what your tea brewing vessels are, and you'll have a pretty good understanding of where to brew and what ratio to use and how much leaf to use with those. So enjoy, happy steeping.